Okay, we got 1 minute. 1 minute for a cup of coffee. And then it all goes downhill. It all goes downhill. Just so everybody knows out there, especially any noobs, let me just say, crapping on other technologies is just what technology professionals do. It is not that JavaScript is a bad language. It's that I don't like JavaScript. And so in the tech world, when you don't like something, it in fact means it's the worst piece of crap that has ever existed and should be ground under your heel, simply because you don't like it. So anyways, if anybody gets offended, if anybody gets all offended by my comments about JavaScript, grow up. It's a programming language. Go out, get a life. But anywho, it is 2:05. So I guess we will dive into the class, or the beginning of the class today. As you may or may not know, I am Eli the Computer Guy. I've been doing technology education since 2009. I've been doing tech since 1996. And basically the idea with Silicon Dojo is authoritas, gatekeepers, free to end-user hands-on technology education that empowers you to do whatever the hell it is that you want to do. What if technology education was here to make your life better? It's a wacky idea. It's a wacky idea. But that's what we're trying to do here. If you're online, which I guess you would be because you're watching this on Zoom, do realize we do have a Silicon Dojo website now. Spoiler alert, I'm still working on it. It's still getting worked on, but it exists. If you go to silicondojo.com, it has a little about thing. It has a link to our GitHub. So basically, GitHub is where all the current documentation is at, so you can just freely download it there. It has our schedule, so it shows us the current things coming up. This particular class we're going to do today, REST APIs with JSON, or REST APIs and JSON in Python. That's a class that's going to be taught here in Asheville next week. And basically, the point for this is we have multiple meetups. We have 3 different meetups. And so I can put all the scheduling on here, and then you can just see what classes you want to go to and what classes you are actually able to go to. And then we have a little month view down here. So you can see we are actually starting to get busy with education. It's almost like I'm doing something real. Wow. And then we have links and that kind of thing here. It has membership. It has a forum. So if you want to come here and you want to become a member, you can become a member. Let's see again, GitHub, all the content on here is not just free for you to use, but it's free for you to use in basically any format that you want to. If you want to download this content, if you want to create these classes, if you want to charge for these classes, fine. It's not worth my energy to worry about intellectual property. Not only is this class free to the end user, but all the material on how we're trying to be designing this program is free to whoever wants to use it. These classes do get recorded in 4K. So this is the Zoom camera right here, where you get to see the resolution that you're getting. 1080p isn't all the same. Anyways, you're getting a 1080p per Zoom video here, which is questionable. There is a camera literally 1 inch to the right for me that's recording all of this in 4K. Basically, that video gets edited. It gets uploaded to the Eli the Computer Guy YouTube channel, either that night or the day after, and it'll be live. And if you want to see things like code and that type of deal, it's a hell of a lot easier to see on the 4K screen. If you want to follow me on normal social media or whatever, the only real social media that I actually use is on LinkedIn. You can follow me on LinkedIn and see what the hell is I'm talking about on LinkedIn. Again, we do have 3 different meetups for the different things I'm trying to do. So basically the idea is we're trying to create a web for Silicon Dojo. So we have like the online component, and then I'm here in Asheville, North Carolina. So the idea is we create like an in-person Asheville component, and then Raleigh is amazing. Raleigh makes me feel like I'm not a complete bastard anymore. I go to Raleigh, and they're just wonderful folks up there. Research Triangle, if you want to see the nicest tech community you will ever see in your life, it is the Pleasantville of bits and bytes, and I crap you not. Anyways, so we're going to be creating a Research Triangle version of Silicon Dojo to hopefully create this I don't know, this thing. So anyways, there's different meetups, and that's why we have the schedule on the main channel for these different ones. I will say, again, with these physical in-person ones, there are only so many seats. If you take a seat and you do not put your ass in said seat, you're a bastard. You're a bastard. Do not RSVP for in-person events if there's no possible way that you can get to it. It is not cute. When you're in Spain and you sign up for Asheville or Raleigh, unless you're hopping on a flight, which may be the case, please do not do that. So anyways, that's basically the intro. That is the intro. So now we get to, let's see here. Oh yeah, what do we have to say too? I will say this in every class. Again, free to the end user isn't actually free. This stuff does cost me money. There is a support Silicon Dojo at DonorBox. You may see DonorBox links around. If you click on this, it'll take you. God damn it, DonorBox. Don't do this to me now, DonorBox. You're making me look bad, DonorBox. Oh, you're every one of those days. Anyways, there's supposed to be a form that is orange that shows up here that asks you if you want to put in a one-time donation or a monthly donation. Might I recommend you do a monthly donation? That means I know I have an actual budget. So anyways, imagine, in your mind, imagine an orange form right there. So anyways, with that, let's get into JavaScript. I hate JavaScript, and I cannot lie. One of the things you're going to learn if you become a technology professional, again, as I was kind of talking about before, is that we all kind of like the technologies that we like. To be clear, there's no morality about your programming language. There's no ethics about your programming language. Again, geeks, here's the thing with geeks. We figure out what we like, and then we consider everything else evil. And that's how it works. Probably is how most of the world works. So when I complain about JavaScript, it's just my personal preference. I like Python. Python is a great language. I think JavaScript is a pain in the ass. But in the technology world, you are hired to fix it. Nobody gives a damn what you think. Again, I'll just put this out there again. Whatever's going on in the political world, I'll just put this out there as a technology professional. Nobody cares about you. Whatever you imagine is special about you, nobody cares. You either fix the problem or you're an idiot. Your identity is either problem fixer or moron. It is rather binary in the real tech world. So anyways, even if you hate something, you still got to use it sometimes. So today we're going to be talking about form validation and sanitization with JavaScript and Python. So this is an important concept because we got to make sure that the data that goes into your data store, the data that gets processed, is not bad data. Languages may not be moral or ethical or immoral and unethical, but data can be horrible. Right? And so basically you run into a lot of issues with basically users that are going to be putting data into your systems. You can have basically the security issues. Whatever you hear about is called injection attacks. Basically users can try to attack your infrastructure using the platforms and the code that you've created. And so that's a bad thing. And users can also be dumb. They can be shockingly dumb. And so they can try to dump data into your systems. That's just abject garbage, right? And as I say, in the database world, data world is garbage in, garbage out. Again, when your company wants data, they want data they can do something with. They don't just want terabytes and terabytes and terabytes of crap data. So basically what we're going to be doing is we're going to be doing validation and sanitization. Basically what we're talking about with validation is that we're simply validating that the data kind of, sort of, looks how we think it's supposed to look. Like, right? If somebody is supposed to be submitting an email address, now at this point in time, we're not verifying that the email address actually works, right? We're just validating that there's blah at blah dot blah, right? So basically, if I'm validating, it's like, okay, I got something here, I got this, I got this, I got this, I got this. That looks like an email address. I'm validating it as a as data that is formatted the way that we think it's supposed to be formatted. So again, if you have users out in the world, like me, and you want an email address, and I do bob at bob.com, which of course is my go-to address. And you're gonna be like, wow, Eli, you got bob.com? That's amazing. How did you buy bob.com? I did not buy bob.com. If this is your email address, I highly apologize. I'm the reason you're getting so much spam. Right? Because that's the thing, right? They have validation, right? They're validating that the data looks how it's supposed to look. That doesn't actually mean that they're validating that the data is correct, right? So it's bob at bob.com. That looks like a real email address, and so they dump it into the system. Garbage in, garbage out. And so that's one of the important things to think about, like when we start talking about these whole validation things, is basically what are you actually doing? So like this process is validation. The next process that we're not going to get into today because it's its own mess is something called verification, right? So when you plug an email address into their system, they're going to validate that it looks like an email address. That is going to get dumped into their system, and then they should use something called SMTP service to then send you an email to bob at bob.com that says, please reply. And then once you reply, that would be verification that this email address is your email address. But basically, at this point in time, again, these are systems. These are set of layers, your whole stack. At this point in time, basically, we just want to make sure that it at least vaguely looks like an email address, right? So if somebody just puts in Bob, right, that's definitely not an email address. If somebody puts in at Bob, that's not an email address. If they do Bob at Bob, that's not an email address. So basically we're just trying to make sure that it looks vaguely how it's supposed to. And that's all we're talking about when we talk about the validation process. The next part is the sanitization process, and that is where we get into things like injection attacks. So a couple months ago, I showed you guys how to create a web app. That was kind of vulnerable to high hell. And the reason is because you can actually send multiple commands. Basically, the idea with an injection attack is somebody plugs in the information, and then they put in what's called a delimiter. And so what a delimiter is basically it tells the computer that that's the end of one command, and then they add some additional stuff here. So we talk about this like with injections. Oh, where is my terminal? Okay, right, so this is my terminal right here, and I do a ping c1 cnn.com. Right, so I ping this, and this is the thing. So we had a web app before where basically we would send cnn.com to the web app, and then it would ping it once, and then we would process the reply. Well, the thing is, with injection attacks, I could do ping c1 cnn.com, and then I could do a semicolon. So a semicolon is that delimiter. The semicolon states that command is done, and do something else. We can just do, let's say, ls. We'll just do an ls to make life easier here. So it'll run cnn.com, and it'll run ls. And so we hit enter. We now we start to see our entire folder structure here. Why? Because I was able to inject that ls command after the original command. And so again, if you're going to be sending commands to the operating system, sending commands to the database, that type of thing. Not only do you want to validate that the data looks like it's supposed to, but you want to sanitize it to kind of scrub out any of these kind of characters or commands that might start making your systems do do wacky things. I will say, as I was doing this class, as I tell you all, these classes are beta classes. This is the first run of a lot of these classes. And as I do the first run of a lot of these classes, I go, ooh, I probably should have taught you something else first. You know, this class would make a lot more sense if you understood something else first. Whatever. So anyways, there is something called regex. And we are most likely going to have a class on this next week, because you really do need to learn about regex. Regex is called regular expressions. Basically, this is how you can find patterns within variable values, and then do all kinds of fancy, amazing things once you've found those patterns. If you understand regex, well, you can do a lot of stuff that I'm going to be showing you today in possibly easier, more powerful, more scalable ways. But I realized I hadn't taught you regex yet, so some of the things I'm going to show you today might be a wee bit janky. That's how it goes. That's how it goes. Regex. We're going to be doing that class next week. The reason I'm not folding, oh look at that, donor box. The reason I'm not folding regex fully into the class today is because it's its own mess. Regex, regular expressions. The way to think about it, if you've ever dealt with sysadmins, asking a sysadmin to subdivide a subnet, right, you'll just see their brains melt. I don't know what it is. I got my MCSE in 2000. 24 years ago I got my MCSE. And if you're like, Eli, I'm going to give you a Class C subnet, and I need you to divide it into 4, other private nets, my brain will melt out. Even though I know it's octets, and it's this, and it's that. It's pretty simple math. Anyways, right, there's just something about it. There's just something about doing subnet masking that makes sysadmins want to cry. Same thing is true with regex. You want to see a coder cry? Regex. Ah. So anyways, that's one of the reasons we're not going too deep into it today is I don't know if any technology is truly immoral or unethical, but regex probably comes close. It's just one of those things. Human brains. Oh, I understand that. Does Bill Nye know you stole his shtick? I never saw Bill Nye the Science Guy. I have no idea what Bill Nye's shtick is. I'm too old. I'm a not boomer. I never saw Bill Nye. Literally have never seen Bill Nye the Science Guy. So yeah. Okay, so when we talk about this whole process that we're going to be talking about today, we are going to be dealing with JavaScript, and we're going to be dealing with Python, and that's the end of it because I didn't want to get too complicated. Again, when we start talking about this process, we start talking about layers, right? When we talk about security, security is about layers. The idea is if any of these layers are penetrated, this is crap, if any of these layers are penetrated, that the rest of your security should remain viable, right? If I posted my global username and password for a global admin account in the Active Directory world on a bulletin board, theoretically, if I have layered security the way that I should have layered security, it literally shouldn't matter. Even if you have that username and that password for my entire infrastructure, who the hell cares? Because there should be enough security to prevent you from getting into my infrastructure. So that's one of the reasons we look at things like JavaScript, and we look at Python, and we look at how we do security for a database, because we need to be creating those layers. And so basically the first thing is over here with the user. There we go, that actually works. Here's a user, and they've got their little computer, and on their computer, they're using Firefox or whatever else, and so they're using a client-side programming language. So that client-side programming language is going to be JavaScript, right? So basically text gets sent from your server to their browser turns that text into the fancy application that you're looking at. And so here, again, we can do the validation, and we can do the sanitization routine to try to clean up the data. The data then goes from here, and then it will go to your server. So your web server. So we use Python as the programming language, and we use Bottle as the web app framework. This could be PHP, this could be Ruby on Rails, this could be C#, a whole bunch of different things. We use Python, and so basically when the data comes here, then we're going to use Python, and we're going to do validation and sanitization, right? So basically we're going to make sure, we're going to try to clean up the data here, And then the data is going to get sent to Python, and then we're going to re-verify, either verify that the data has been cleaned up, or do some little additional scrubbing to it. And then from there, it's supposed to go to your SQL server, your structured query language server. In your structured query language server, you have something called a schema. And basically, in that schema, you're supposed to have data types. And so data types are either text, or they're ints, or they're just 1,000 different data types at this point in time, right? So if I try to insert Bob into a value that was supposed to be an int, that would fail out, and this whole process would fail, and then data wouldn't go in. And so that's one of the big things, right? This is supposed to be trying to verify and clean up, and this is supposed to be trying to verify and clean up, and this is kind of the gatekeeper of the last resort. And if everything gets clean, it gets put into the SQL database. If not, it gets dumped out. One of the things to be thinking about, we don't go into a lot of this today. I do show you some UI, UX, some crappy UI, UX. But one of the things you need to be thinking about with this whole process is not just how do you block things. Blocking things is easy. But then what do you return? What do you tell your users when something gets blocked? Whatever you design it. Now, but that's one of those things you got to think about. Again, like you got to think about, like for your users, if there's a problem, you have to tell them there's a problem. You have to be as descriptive as possible about why there is a problem. But from a security standpoint, you don't want to be so descriptive that a hacker can just sit there and write down basically how your infrastructure works. So that's one of the things to be considering with this whole process. When are the Sigma classes? I have no idea what Sigma classes are. HTML and JavaScript element validation with validity.valid. So this is kind of interesting. So basically with HTML5. So we've talked about HTML5 before. HTML5 is the bestest of HTMLs. Right? We had HTML4 before. 1, 2, and 3 I never saw in my life. Then there was 4. 4 we had for 15 years of my career, and you know, it did what it did. Then it came out with 5. The big thing about 5 is before CSS and JavaScript were kind of like duct taped to HTML. Like everybody knew HTML was kind of like the centerpiece for web apps. But then they're like, how do we add additional functionality? And they spent like 15 years trying to figure that out. Like, oh, maybe we'll put Flash on there. Maybe we'll do this other crap. And oh, it was ugly. So ugly. So anyways, at some point they figured, hey, you know, for formatting purposes, we're going to use CSS. And for kind of client-side functionality purposes, we're going to use JavaScript. So they kind of solidified on CSS and JavaScript with HTML. And so basically they bundle all that together into something called HTML5. And the powerful thing about HTML5 is you start getting what are called HTML5 APIs, application programming interfaces, which means you are able to use JavaScript relatively seamlessly to help build out and create interactivity with your web app. And so there's a lot of stuff that's now built into HTML5 where you can just kind of make a call now to get a result where you used to have to, you know, write 20 lines of code before. And so that's one of the things here, which is kind of cool with this whole element validation constraints. If we go over, we take a look here, this is from Mozilla. There's a link in the thing, and basically within the input box, within the form input, you can actually start adding things in here to tell JavaScript what it's supposed to look for, right? So like type. So previously, if you have input and type, you may have had text, you may have had an option box, you may have had a select box, you may have had a radio box, that type of thing with HTML4. The cool thing now is you can plug in things like email. So you can say this is supposed to be an email address, and then you can pass that information basically on, and JavaScript will just be able to take a look and very simply be able to see, is it an email address? You can say, is it required? Is this a required box or not a required box? You can simply put that within the HTML5. What's interesting with it, again, you can put in patterns, so specific patterns that you're trying to look for, again, kind of like regular expressions there. You can put a minimum, so basically a range. What's the minimum value that's supposed to be there? What's the maximum value that's supposed to be there? Again, whether it's required, that type of stuff. So basically, you can now all put that into this line that basically says, you know, what information you're looking for. Let me pull this up in here. So it's a little bit easier to look at with the colors, right? So basically with this, what I've got is I'm just creating a little page. I'm going to have an input value, or I'm going to have a little input box up here, and I'm going to put in here what I'm looking for. Input type, I'm going to be looking for an email. I'm going to have an ID. Again, do remember in the JavaScript world, IDs are absolutely unique. There's only one ID. So this ID is input, and we're going to call it required. As we talked about with JavaScript before, we can create a button under this. We can say on the click of the button, we're going to do the validate function, right? We come down here to the script, and this is the validate function. You create the function validate. We can't create a constant, so constant is a variable value that will not change. We don't want to modify this. Input equals document, so the document, the DOM, get element by ID, input. So we're going to get whatever I plugged in that box. If input dot validity dot valid, so input, this is what we're talking about. If it's valid, we're going to say alert valid input dot value. So the input value is the value for input. Else, so it's not valid, we're going to say not valid plus input value. Woo, complicated stuff. Let's see here. If we go over and we take a look at this, input validation. And we say, oh, please, Spaghetti Monster. Oh, please, Cabana, let this work today. Let this work. Okay, so I'm going to plug in an email address here. All right, so I'm going to plug in bob@bob.com. Boom, there we go. I don't know how well you can see it. It says valid bob@bob.com. So it has the correct format of an email address. If I close that and I simply do bob@bob and I validate, oh, that says valid. Oh, come on now. Not valid. Okay, weirdly enough, bob@bob actually works. And again, that's one of the things you have to worry about with this whole verification process. Anyways, so I put bob, just bob in there. It says not valid -- bob. Right, so that's the basic example here. Now for this particular example, you do not need a server to run this. You can literally just write this as code. You can just copy and paste the code, save it as a .html document, double click it, open up in your web browser, and hopefully it should work for you. Right? The cool part about this though is, again, what if we want to modify this? Where we're like, oh, I don't really care about emails right now. All I want to do is URLs. See why this is so nice and easy? Again, especially in a copy-paste world, so I'm going to do Control S. So now it's looking for URLs. So if I refresh and I do bob@bob.com and validate, it'll say not valid because it's not a URL. So here, what you have to do is you actually have to have http://cnn.com, and I do validate. That says valid, http://cnn.com. So one of the nice parts with this is basically you can just plug in. There's a few different things. There's text, there's numbers, there's URLs, there's email. You can go into a little, again, I have some of the stuff here. Email, number, URL, text. So basically you can just plug those in and it'll be able to just basically validate that the data looks like how it's supposed to look simply by replacing that little line of code. So that's one of the things that's easy there. Again, if we take a look at this, so input.validity.valid, so basically if it's valid, we're going to create an alert box. So that alert box is that message box that pops up. We're going to say valid, -- this is concatenation, so plus input valid. Else, alert, not valid, plus input value, and then we close everything out and we close the script. Does that make some amount of sense? Do remember, if you have any questions, you can raise your hand, and I'll answer you just as soon as I can. There are no wrong questions, no bad questions. So anyways, so that's what that is. We can start making this more complicated. And we can go here and basically I've created this whole form validation thing. Again, you can download this from GitHub. But basically this, just to kind of give you a better idea of how all this works, and so we have the form up here. So I'm going to create a form. I'm not going to do anything with the data in the form at this point in time, so there's no action. So action is where you send the data in the form. There's no method, post, none of that's there. We just create the form, so I have a form to deal with. It's going to ask for name, input type equals text, ID is name, and it's required. Age, input type number, ID age, and it's required. Email, type email, ID, that was supposed to be changed. Hold on one second, that gets changed to email. That gets changed to email. Hope I don't break this. Don't break this. Okay, that should be right. Okay, alright, so we got email, ID email, URL, a website, and then since this is a form, so we have input type, submit, so this is that little submit button, value of submit, just say submit, on click, validate the event, so validate everything in here. We come down to the function, so we have event.prevent default. So what this is going to do is this is going to make it so the form doesn't try to send the data anywhere. All I want is a message box to pop up, that's it, I'm not trying to send the data anywhere. Then we're creating the constants for name, age, email, and website. Document.get element by ID, name, age, email, and website. We're going to create a message here, so we're going to create a blank message. Remember, with JavaScript, when you're creating a variable, you name it as let. So it's either const or let. Constant is a variable that you are not going to change the value of. You create it, done. Let is a variable that you will change the value of. Do you remember in plain old JavaScript, there are no data types at all. That's why people use TypeScript and var. Var is the old way of doing it, and they deprecated that for some reason. So if you see var here, it might work, but don't use it. Use let. Then all we're going to do here is if not name.validity.valid. So if you put a little, if you don't put the exclamation point there, it'll just ask, if it's true or false. So what I'm trying to say is if this is false, an exclamation point says if this is false, do something. So if not name validity valid, message equal plus equals name is not valid. So plus equals means you add to the end of it. You take the value of the variable before and you add more and you add more and you add more. So we have the next line there. If age, not age, valid, age is not valid. If not email valid, email is not valid. If not website valid, URL is not valid. And then if there's a message, so if the message is there, it's going to do an alert box to actually show the message. Else, basically there's a blank message as we started with, it's going to alert, form is valid. So we go over and take a look at form validation. Oh, this is what it looks like. All right, so name, age, email, and URL. Right, so if I just try to submit right now, this is what we're going to get because it's required. All this stuff is required. So name is not valid, age is not valid, email not valid, URL not valid. Right, so if I go up here and I can say Bob, 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 because I don't care. It's your database, not my database. And so I can put this in. And we can say age is not valid, email is not valid, URL is not valid. Right? Okay, so I go here and I say I'm 17. I hit submit, email is not valid, and URL is not valid. I do an email of bob@bob.com. We can now see URL is not valid. And then we can see, say, http://bob.com. And we hit the submit, and we get form is valid. Form is not accurate. It's not accurate, but the data sort of looks like how it's supposed to look. And so that's kind of the cool thing with this whole type of validation thing with HTML5. Basically all you do is you put the type of data that you're expecting, and then you can simply try to validate that that data looks how it's supposed to look. Any questions from anybody? Don't make me pull out the virtual koosh ball. I'll wing it at you. Anybody else here a 90s kid, or I guess an 80s kid? Get the koosh balls winged at us. So then we get into a little bit of regex. Well, dude, just a suite of regex. I am going to show you just enough regex to make you confused, and then we're gonna move the hell on because we'll deal with this in a class later. Anyways, so basically one of the things you can do is sanitize with JavaScript using regex. So again, what we were doing before is validating that the data looked like how it was supposed to look. Now we want to try to sanitize. Which is this one. This is sanitize. Okay, so basically the idea here is that we're going to be removing stuff from the data that's coming in so that it cannot pollute our precious little database here. Same thing that we had before. Input type is going to equal text, ID is going to equal input, and we're going to make it required. Button on click, we're going to sanitize. I should have changed that to sanitize. Sanitize. Be nice if I could actually type. Okay, and so basically, when we click, we're going to go to sanitize. We have the sanitize function down here. We're going to get the input from the element by input. So the ID input, that is going to come here. We're going to have a constant of input. Then we're going to create a constant for clean. So we're going to remove HTML tags from the input value. So when input comes in, we want to get the value of input, and then we're going to remove the HTML tags. So we've created a JavaScript function up here to basically do that with regex. So we're going to be using the replace method. So the replace method, what this does is it looks at a variable value, and it literally replaces the stuff that's in there. So normally we're replacing things one character at a time. With this, we're replacing a whole bunch of characters here. So basically we're going to send the value of input up to here, and then we're going to return input.replace. So basically anything that matches this regex pattern is going to be replaced with absolutely nothing. How do I explain this? Again, we're going to go into regex later. Basically, more or less, this part right here is everything that's required for the start of an HTML tag, href, iframe, img inserts, that type of thing. This is basically looking for that kind of thing. We have the plus for any of the characters in the middle, so any characters between the beginning little arrow angle, right? And then this is how we close the arrow angle. So basically anything between these angles, we want them to go away. And then G, basically that's going to be looking for multiple occurrences of this within the variable. It's regex. Again, as I say, ChatGPT, it's not AI, but it is useful. If you're like, I need a regex expression, go to ChatGPT. It'll do you better than me. Anyways, this is regex. We'll talk about it more in a different class. I just kind of want to give you the idea of this is how you can do pattern matching. And basically what you're going to do is you're going to replace it with absolutely nothing. We're going to do an alert box. We're going to show original. So original is going to be the input value. Then we're going to say what the clean value is, and we're going to show it as the clean value. If we go over then, right, so like this, so I do Bob, right? So I do Bob, and I validate, and it says the original was Bob, and clean is Bob. Because Bob is Bob. There are no HTML tags there. But what if I'm trying to be snaky, right? You know, that's one of the things I have to think about. Like if you have a forum, if you have anything where people are able to insert their own information, what if they try to insert links? What if they try to insert images? What if they try to insert pixels for tracking purposes and that type of thing, right? So if I did like href equals http cnn.com close Bob, right? So basically, I'm putting my name there, but I'm wrapping it in an href, so that's a hyperlink, so maybe people will click on CNN or whatever. If we click on validate now, basically what we see is original. So the original is ahref, that whole ahref thing. And then we see the clean is Bob. So we get rid of all the HTML tags, and all we are left with is the text, and that's what we actually want. So this is the basic concept behind sanitization is actually taking that data, cleaning it up, so at least it doesn't make our systems any less secure. Hand up from Hoken. Yes, what's up?
Hi. Hi.
Yep.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
This cross-site. This is called cross-site attack. Yeah.
Cross-site attack. That can be used in a cross-site attack. Yeah. So what a cross-site attack is basically what happens, right? You, as a user, you go to a particular website. Some other user somewhere basically added a code, an ahref tag, an iframe tag, that type of thing, that points to their server. So they're either trying to get you to do something based off of what they want, or they're trying to use it as a tracking mechanism or something like that. Again, if you look at forums from like 15 years ago, one of the interesting things was so many people actually put their own banner ads, like AdSense banner, AdWords banner ads, like into their own signatures so that they could make money off of the forums, which forums did not like. Yeah, so this is basically how you can try to strip that kind of stuff out. Yep.
What is the difference between this method and injection?
So injection is where, so cross-site is basically somebody put something onto these people's servers so that it references their server, so that when you go to it, you're getting stuff off of their server. Again, tracking, whatever, clicks, that type of thing. What injection is if, the user goes to your site and again is being asked to put information into this form. So instead of just putting information, they put information and then they put that semicolon and then they add their attack to the end of it. So what will happen is when the server receives it, it'll get this first command, it'll run the first command, it will see that like semicolon, so that basically that delimiter, when it does, it'll go, oh, there's another command I should run. It'll then run that command on your server, and that's why I say like with layers of security, depending on the vulnerabilities of your server, when that command runs, if it has escalated privileges or whatever else, all hell could break loose. So, yeah.
The injection happens in the form itself or in the URL?
In the well, so that happens in the post. So it's called post, or I guess get. Anyways, that happens in the information that's being sent by the user to your server. So again, if you have a form, right? If you have something like this, basically they plug in the information, they do the semicolon or they do the escape, and then they add in their additional attack.
Thank you.
Yep. Cool. Okay, mute. And Jock, what's up?
Hey, how's it going? I'm going to be switching to my other computer in a second, but I had a question. Maybe I'm misunderstanding the higher level concept. So JavaScript is a front-end language, and it's helped to build functionality to an HTML web page.
Yep.
And most of the sanitation and validation, that's on the back end. So again, my understanding might be off. Templates like websites like Wix and Squarespace that uses templates to build your website,
yep,
aren't these built in to those type of sites to use templates to kind of like validate, sanitize the information to make sure that it's getting sent in right away, or you have to put that functionality into the website once you use like services like that?
So if you're using Wix or Squarespace, the security is up to them. It's whatever they designed. So like doing this is when you're building your own website or your own web application. So because you're using their templates, and again, we talk about Wix templates, that's not the same as Bottle or Django templates. That's something else. So if you're using Wix or you're using Squarespace's templates, these are already essentially pre-designed entire websites, web systems, and then you're just modifying titles and text and that type of thing. So basically with theirs, they should have both components like this in JavaScript on the front end, and they definitely need to have it in their back end language. So again, they should be balanced on both sides too.
But they just still have the vulnerabilities like you're showing us today, unless you check them yourself, correct?
No, no. If you're using Wix or Squarespace, it's a trust issue. It's whatever they design. You are not. I hate to say you're not. You should not be able to get access to being able to modify this type of thing on most of those types of sites. Because that's the whole thing. That's why they have a whole. They should again should they should have a whole security team that are nailing down these types of vulnerabilities, so it doesn't even come up for you.
Okay, copy. Thank you.
Cool. Yep. Yeah, I mean that's the whole. Again, that's what gets confusing in the modern world. Remember, there's technology, and then there's products, right? So what we're talking about today, this is the technology. This is how this stuff works, and then there's the products that you actually use to deliver the solution. So again, if you're like when we're creating stuff in these classes, we're going to be using Python, and we use the Bottle web app framework. So in the Bottle web app framework, again, this is where you have to be careful with words. There are templates. There are template files. This has nothing the frick to do with Wix or Squarespace, right? So anyways, when you're designing something with Bottle or Django or PHP or Ruby on Rails, you are basically more or less building a soup to nuts. You're responsible for this. Also, if you're building a website and you go out to a theme site, right? So nowadays, don't roll your own for a lot of this stuff unless you need to. You can go out for $25. You can buy a pre-made theme or a pre-made, again, template that you can put onto your website. So you have a web server, a LAMP server or whatever, some kind of web server. You put that onto your website. You modify that in order to create the web app that you want. Again, that is still all of your responsibility. You're basically just buying pre-made CSS, pre-made JavaScript. It's still your responsibility to make sure all this is doing what the hell it's supposed to do. That is different than Wix or Squarespace or some of these other sites. They're an overall platform. Their solution that they're offering you should be a secure and reliable platform that allows any jackass to be able to spin up a web app without worrying about this type of thing. So that's where it's different between like Wix and building your own with Django or whatever. And again, that's the other thing to be thinking about with the products that you use, right? Somebody had that question about whether they should create a web application using Flask or using Django. So Django is a web app framework, basically everything including this kitchen sink and a couple of other things. And they were like, well, should I just roll my own? One of the things to be thinking about is if you use Flask, so Flask is a small framework that you have to add a whole bunch of crap to. Well, when you're adding all that crap, it's you on your own. Right? It's you. It's you. If you make a mistake, if you don't put a comma in the right place, if you forget to do something, if you screw up this regex somehow, all of that is on your shoulders. Whereas you go to Django, and they already have membership components already built in. They already have the user sign-up system built into Django, the login system built into Django, permission systems built into Django. And Django is a platform, a framework that's used by many people. So if you go there, you're using a system that's used by thousands and thousands of businesses that people are taking a look at every day. And again, that becomes that whole question of, do you really want to roll your own and any mistake you make is yours? Or do you just want to go with, you know, what 100,000 other people are already using? And these are, again, these are decision points that you have to think about. Okay. So that is sanitizing using regex. And again, we will get a little bit more into regex in another class. But basically, again, like I say with regex, what it is you create these patterns. So this is a pattern that matches. And so what this is going to be doing is going to be matching basically any HTML tags that it finds. And for this, we're simply going to replace any HTML tags with absolutely nothing. And that's what cleans up our text. Let's see here. Oh wow, we're going a little fast today. Going fast on a Friday. I like that. Okay, so now we're getting to the Python part. So again, as we talked about before, there's two parts here. There's the user side. User side is the JavaScript side, and then your side is the Python or whatever backend language that you're using side. So they have this thing called validators. And basically, there was this validators module for Python. And basically what it allows you to do is it allows you to see what type of data text that's coming in looks like, right? So for this, if you're going to use it, it is a module that you install, Python 3 pip install validators. And then once you do that, you can simply import validators, and you can use the validators function to basically say, is this a URL? Is this an email? Is this a domain? Is this an IPv4 address that's coming through, and do something? Take a look at this with a little bit more color. This is what it looks like with more color. Again, we're going to import the validators module. We're going to create a function. So define function is valid input, the input value that's coming in. If validators.url, so if input is a URL, print out that it's a URL. If .email, if it's an email, print out that it's an email. If domain, so cnn.com, silicondojo.com, blah, 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 print, it's a domain. If it's an IPv4 address, you can say it's an IPv4 address. And then one of the cool things with validators is it has a lot of this stuff that's pre-built in. So if you don't want to get really complicated with regex, you can just use a module like validators. Basically what we have down here is a while true loop, value equals input. I input something, it will run that value through the function, and we'll see what it is. If we then go, so this is in Python, so this is my backend language, so I click on the run button here, and so it asks me for the input, right? And so I can say cnn.com, and it says cnn.com is a domain. I can say bob at bob.com, bob at bob.com is an email. I can say 1.1.1.1. 1.1.1.1 is an IP address. And was there something else? Domain, IP address. Oh, URL. We do http www.silicondojo.com. It is a URL, and I can just put gobbledygook, and it says gobbledygook is not valid. And so basically this is where you can have text coming in, again, from that JavaScript. Again, we're going to have a little project with Bottle in a couple minutes, but you can have the data coming in from JavaScript. Once you've already had JavaScript take a look at it, it comes in to Python, and then Python with something like the validators module can then also verify that it looks how it's supposed to look if there was some way that somebody may have like compromised it on the way in. Again, that's one thing to be thinking about with things like injection attacks. Again, and stuff gets really complicated. There's the simple stuff. There's the simple stuff that I try to teach you all. But there are questions like, okay, so you got the user here, and they're being validated and sanitized with JavaScript, and you have the server here that has Python on it. There is a question about, in this communication, when the user is sending it to the server, can somebody compromise? Essentially, get on the session. So a session is the communication between the client and the server. Can somebody compromise the session to try to dump some additional data in there? Again, can they basically hijack, so the data is coming in? Can they hijack what you were sending, add a little bit more of what they want to send, and send that to Python? That's also a possibility there. So one of the reasons, again, that you want Python, or your backend language, to be taking a look at this data is just to verify, not so everything isn't completely reliant on JavaScript, because again, if you rely on one thing, it will fail. Anyways, so this is one way to deal with it. Let's see here. We can sanitize input with replace. So yeah, this is an example of what I've shown you before. So sanitize, replace. Okay, so this is basically a version of the crappy code I taught you. I taught you how to create before, right? So basically what we have here is we have import OS. So that's the OS module, that's built in. Command equals ping space -c1. So ping one time, whatever it is around ping. So while true, we're going to create a variable for site. Input equals a domain name. And then we're going to say site equals site.replace, semicolon, with nothing. And the response equals os.popen. So this is a function for OS where we're able to send a command to the operating system, get a response back, and then we're going to read it, we're going to turn it into text, and then we're going to print the response there. So let me comment this out for a second to show you what the vulnerability is, right? So basically now I'm going to get an input and I can put stuff into it, right? So it's like, okay, I get my domain name, who am I trying to ping? So I try to ping cnn.com, and I get cnn.com, right? That's how it's supposed to work. But here's the thing, oops. Anyways, what if I do ping cnn.com, not ping. If I do cnn.com, so that's the domain name. So it's asking me for a domain name, I'll put that in there, and then I put in semicolon, and I do ls. So basically just list, right? So this is going to send the command, to the server. It's going to ping cnn.com once. It's then going to see the semicolon, so it's going to say, oh, additional commands follow. It will then process those additional commands, and then it will send it all back and show it to me on the screen. So if I hit enter now, what we can see is we get my little ls, right? So we go up here, right? This is the ping command. And at the end of that, it did a semicolon, and now it's giving me a full list of everything that is on my computer. And so it's running that command at the privilege level I am currently logged in on. So if I wanted to create files, if I wanted to use like wget, if I wanted to do something like that, I could theoretically inject that type of command in and have that function. So what you do is you simply replace. Again, for this, all we're doing is replacing the semicolon. So when we run this again, if I do cnn.com, semicolon ls, so basically what I did before, and I hit enter, now we're going to see that I get this weird ass failure because that wasn't a good ping command, because I ripped out the semicolon, and so now it's cnn.com space ls. That doesn't mean anything, right? So if I do cnn.com semicolon ls, right? Cannot resolve cnn.com ls because it removed that semicolon, and so that kind of tries to get rid of that type of injection attack. So again, that's one of the things to be considering with the system. And again, that's why it's so important to understand how your stack works. Again, whether you're on Windows, whether you're on Linux, whether you're on AWS, whether you're on Azure, simply understanding what commands are able to be sent, into the system is very important for being able to do things like strip stuff out. Let's see here. Escaping HTML tags. So basically, with the HTML module, you can escape out tags. That can be very useful. So HTML escape. So basically what this is going to do is if I add HTML tags in, the HTML tags themselves will be escaped out so that people can view them. They're still viewable, they're kind of like, they are very similar to the characters that you need for HTML, but they won't actually work. So if we do this, so basically with this, we import the HTML module. So we do a while true input. We're going to put in something from the user, and then we're going to sanitize. We're going to send this through a sanitize function. So we're going to send the value up to this function that we created, sanitize HTML, and the value is going to come in. Then we're simply going to return HTML.escape, and then whatever came in. Right. So if I run this, again, if I put in Bob, I just get back Bob. Again, what if I do that href thing? So what if I put in href equals http cnn.com Bob, right? So again, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to put in this hyperlink here, so then people will click on my stuff, and yay, I scam somebody. Now what you'll see is when I get this back, I get this garbage instead. So what these are is these are characters that basically escape out of the actual HTML. So the HTML is required to be very specific characters for the web browser to process them properly. And so basically what this is doing is it's escaping out of the actual characters and giving you something that looks a lot like what you think those characters are supposed to look like. So if you saw these on on a website, it would look like HTML, but it wouldn't fire off like HTML, and that's the important thing. One of the things to be considering with this type of thing, like when you're looking at sanitizing data, is one of your questions needs to be, is it important for you to know if somebody's trying to attack your site or cause problems? Is it important for people that are trying to cause problems in your site to basically get garbage out? Right? Again, both from a way to dissuade people from being stupid, and also for you to know if somebody's trying to go after your site, right? So basically, as I showed you before, with simply sanitizing, so if somebody tries to put in HTML tags and you just simply delete them, you just delete them entirely, and then that gets inputted into the database. That's nice, that's clean, no muss, no fuss, no tears. But here's one of the things to think about with that. Are you going to know when that event happens? If one person does that a day, would you know? If 10,000 people did that a day, would you know? Would you know if your site is actually under an attack from jackasses that are trying to do this, right? If you simply sanitize out that data, it is no muss, no fuss, but you may also not have a record that that kind of thing is happening, so you may not realize, that the threat profile for your system has dramatically changed. The other thing, if there's no muss, no fuss, right? People try to put in this crappy stuff, and then basically it gets cleaned up, and so it looks normal, and then there's no real punishment for that. I try to put in a hyperlink for Bob. The hyperlink gets removed, and Bob is there, right? Did I learn my lesson? Do I think that's a pain in the butt? Or am I still going to try to inject crap everywhere I possibly can on your site on the off chance that it'll actually work, right? Whereas if their name is supposed to be something, and then instead of their name being there how it's supposed to be, you get some kind of crap that looks like this, this might be a way to dissuade users from trying to be stupid on your site. And again, one of the big things to be thinking about with users, again, everybody thinks about those Zimbabwean ninja hackers, right? The bot armies that are trying to go after your site. A lot of times, the people that are going to do the most damage to your site and be the biggest jackasses are actually going to be your supporters. The people that like what you're doing, the people that respect what you do, the people that appreciate people like you exist on this planet are going to be the ones that hammer the hell out of your systems. So by basically showing the crap that they're trying to put into your platform, that might be a useful way to dissuade them from continuing to do that. But basically, again, this is just one of those things to be thinking about. Again, we start talking about sanitizing. What are we actually talking about with sanitizing? What we really care about is that whatever code that they were trying to inject is no longer useful. It's no longer usable. That's job number one. Past then, the question is do we want to sanitize by deleting all the additional stuff? Or do we want to sanitize by doing something like escaping out so what they're trying to put in simply doesn't work? What is the answer? That's for you to decide. Oh, let's see here. Dun-dun-dun. Sanitize with the bleach module. So there's, again, with Python, there's all kinds of different modules out there. There's a module called bleach, Python 3, pip install bleach. You can use it to remove both HTML and JavaScript from variables. Bleach sanitize. Where's my bleach sanitize? So this is my bleach sanitize. So I just have this as a static variable here to make life easier, make it easier to understand. Basically, we're going to import bleach. We're going to have a function, sanitize with bleach. We have the input strings. We're going to return bleach, clean. We're going to put the input string in. And the interesting thing here is you're going to actually whitelist tags and attributes. So if there's tags you want to keep, so let's say you want to keep the H1 tags, or you want to keep the strong tag, right? Somebody puts in strong, they're allowed to be strong. On my app, anybody can be strong, right? So you can put strong tag there, whatever. But you want everything else ripped out. You can be strong, but you can't be iframe, right? Anyways, you can put those kind of tags in there. JavaScript attributes, those types of things. You can plug that in. So what we have here is we have our unsafe string, right? A href, so this is a hyperlink. Beyond just simply a hyperlink for click here, it also is a script for an alert box, right? So remember, the websites from back in 2002. Oh my God, again, you would go to some kind of forum and all kinds of crap would pop up on your screen because basically the users injected this kind of crap into the forum, right? This is that type of deal. So safe string equals sanitize with bleach. So we have this function, the unsafe string. So this is the unsafe string. We're going to put it through there and basically it's going to eliminate the HTML tags and it's going to eliminate the JavaScript functionality here. I'm going to print out a blank line just for formatting. We're going to print out the unsafe string just so you can see what it is. We're going to print out another blank line. And we're going to print out the safe string. When we do this, there we go, right? So this is the unsafe string. So this is what this person tried to plug into, their little bio box or whatever on your forum, which would just be a disaster, especially if people try to do that at scale. Instead, this is what you get when it goes to this whole bleaching process. So click here, that is left, and alert XSS, that, right, the script tags are ripped out, so you only get that. So you can see that somebody's trying to put some cross-site scripting in there, and you can do with it as you see fit. So basically that's what the bleach module allows you to do, is in a relatively easy fashion go through and rip out like the HTML and the script tags and that type of thing. Let's see here. Any questions? Any questions? Getting close to the end. Yay. Oh, I guess we are to the final thing. We're to the final app. So this is where we try to make it a little bit more complicated. Let me just make sure. Where is this thing? Web clean. Yep. Okay. So basically what we're going to be doing here is we use that bottle framework. So, oops. Logan, yeah, what's up?
Those models play the role of the PDL in analogy of the PHP PDL class.
PDL class?
PHP that returns the information entered in a form to a string, and then prepared string to go to the database.
Yeah, I mean with PHP you can like this. You can clean up the data. Again, you can sanitize it. It's been a while since I've dealt with PHP. I'm not sure about the PDL class, but you can sanitize. You would just do it in the way that PHP does it. Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Yep. Yeah. So almost all languages, will allow you to do this type of thing. Again, PHP. It's been about a year or two since I worked with it. So yeah, we'll have a class on PHP later. Okay, so with this, basically we have this nice little bottle web app, and what this is going to do is it's going to allow us to input information. And then on the JavaScript side, we're going to try to validate the information before it gets sent. And then on the Python side, we're going to have this process script. And basically what's going to happen is we're going to use this HTML escape, like we did before, to escape out again to kind of show you how that whole href thing works. And so initially, we're going to print everything out, and you're going to see that's an href going to cnn.com, and then we're going to do an escape. And so that's one of the things to be thinking about here, like with the name, right? So an href tag is text. And again, that's one of the things you have to be thinking about, like validation, is when somebody's plugging something in, again, they're trying to plug in their name, and they plug in href instead, but href is text, but then how do you block text? Again, it gets to be one of those questions out there. Just kind of show you how this works. So we're going to be running this. So when we run bottle, again, this is running on my computer at 127.0.0.1, port 8080. So we've done a lot of classes with bottle up until this point, so that's kind of the framework that we use, if you're wondering what this is. And basically what the framework allows us to do is it allows us to create web applications with Python. So with here, right, so we got hello, whatever, name, age, email, right? So if I hit submit, I'm going to get that same message box that I got before. Name is not valid, age is not valid, email is not valid, right? So if I do Bob, and I do Bob, and I do Bob, I do submit, and it'll say age is not valid and email is not valid. So it won't allow me to go any further. And so this is the first layer of security for my crappy web app. So the thing is though, right, so I can put in, let's say 12 for my age, and I can put Bob at bob.com, right? So if I do this, this is how it's supposed to be. I hit submit, there we go. So we get name, Bob, age 12, email, bob at bob.com. So what's happening here is when I hit the little submit button on that form, it's sending that information to Python. Python is processing it, creating this HTML page dynamically, and then delivering it to us. So again, imagine this is being stored into a CSV file, comma separated value file, text file. Imagine this could be stored going into a database. Basically, our output is simply this. Our data store is this, because it makes my life easier. So basically, the Python is simply processing and then pushing that data the next place down the line, right? Well, the thing is, again, what if I have a less than fun person? So they do a pref equals http cnn.com. And again, still got that Bob there, right? So we got the href, we got the 12, we got the email address, and so when I, oops. Come on. Oops. Let me do a refresh. Reload. So I put that in. Bob at bob.com. And I hit submit. Okay. So then I got the age of 12, bob at bob.com. But you'll notice Bob is now purple, and it now has an underline under it. And so this is basically, again, what a lot of people do, is you can click on that, and that now takes me to CNN.com. No! The most horrible thing, bringing news into a tech class. I'm sorry, I'll cover it up. Don't look. But that's one of the kinds of injections that you do have to worry about. And so basically what we can do here, if we go, we stop that, we come down here, and basically name is going to equal, we're going to do HTML, we're going to escape out, we're going to use the escapes, and you'll see what that looks like. Alright, so now we're running it. Go back, we do a refresh. So now I do that, now I do bob at bob.com, we hit submit, and now we get this. And this is what I'm saying, like, it's hard to explain. It looks it looks like the characters you're expecting. But as far as the web browser is concerned, they're not the characters you're expecting. So that isn't the normal arrow, right? Basically, this gets all whatever. It gets reformatted. If we go to show page source, we can see here in page source that, it's name, alt, a, ref, at, quote, blah, 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 right? This is the formatting that shows up here, which is not the same formatting that actually turns it into an HTML hyperlink. If you go through and basically take a look at the code, and all this code is up on GitHub for you to take a look at, a little bit easier since there's about 63 lines of code. Basically, we're using bottle. So from bottle, import run. So that runs it, route, post, and request. We're also going to be importing that HTML module. So that's allowing us to escape out of the HTML. We're going to have a route. So the route is basically the page that you're going to, route of route. This is the index, so we're defining the index function here, and then we're just creating this really big page with JavaScript, which is probably not the best way to do it. This probably should be done, well, definitely should be done with a templates file, but I don't think I've taught you folks template files yet, so anyways, we're just going to write it out here. Right, and so this has the hello at the top, form, action, process. So it's going to send us to the process script. Method is post. The ID is form. Name, input type is text. Name is name. ID is name. It's required. Number is required. Email is required. Submit. We come down here. Again, this is that JavaScript function. We're going to do the validate. We're going to prevent the default. So if there's a problem, we don't want the information to actually be sent to the server. We want it to stop. So we're going to prevent the default. Constant name. So we're going to get the value from name. We're going to get the value for age. We're going to get the value for email address. We're going to create that message like we did before. So we're going to see if not name validity valid. Name is not valid. Doing the same for age. Doing the same for email. So we're going to come down here. If there's a message, so basically if something's wrong, it's going to show the message and it's going to stop. Else, there is no message, it is then going to allow the form to submit. So basically this is get the element ID form, submit button, and it's going to submit the information to our Python script. Let's see here. Then we come down here to process. So post process, name, request.forms.get. So the value from the form coming in, its name is name, age, and email. So we're going to assign those values to these variables. Then we're simply going to do name equals HTML.escape. So this is going to escape the HTML tags. Then we're simply going to create our page with an F string, h1 name is name, h1 age is age, h1 email is email, and then we're going to return that page. It's going to be on host any IP address on this computer at port 8080, and that is what gets us our fine little web app here. Any questions on that? Any questions on that? All right. That's basically the class. Well, that is the class, not basically the class. That's a class. Again, there's something called regex. It's called regular expressions. We'll have a class on that next week because I realized, this would be a lot easier if people knew what regular expressions were. So we're going to do a class on regex next week. And again, with that is being able to use pattern matching, very complicated pattern matching to find very specific things. So that's a little bit better way of trying to go through and, again, try to sanitize and clean up some stuff. But this gives you some basic ideas of how this works. And especially with relatively simple web applications, it's a pretty easy way to go. What's up?
Yes, so I'm very, very new to tech anything.
Okay.
And so could you, I'm in a boot camp. I live in Kentucky.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're just now starting JavaScript. And we're not even going to do, I'm doing web development. Yeah. And we're not even going into Python. So I don't know anything. I barely know JavaScript at all.
Okay. Yeah.
I just know what a comment out looks like. That's what I know about JavaScript. So I want to understand better about the sanitize tag. That, like, how does it work?
Oh, people ask them, like, how does it work? Like with this, so this one, this is where, oh, we're using that regex expression. Is this what you're kind of asking about?
Okay, so when you type in the word sanitize
Yep.
into Java, right? So it's what does it function? You're telling it to
Okay, so basically, so this is just a text box, no big deal. Then we're creating a button under the text box. So again, HTML5, JavaScript, they're all nicely tied together. So basically what we're saying on this button is on click, we want to fire off this JavaScript function. So we're saying on click, do the sanitize function. So we come down here, and so you have to have so if you have an HTML file, all the JavaScript itself basically has to be within JavaScript tags. So when we do sanitize, this is then going to look for a sanitize function. So we created this sanitize function here, right? So function sanitize. So we're going to get input equals document, get element by ID, input, right? So whenever you're looking at anything, so it's called the DOM, the document object model. And so again, JavaScript is supposed to be interacting with this web page. And so names, if you see name here, like name equals, you can use name in multiple different places. You can use 100 different times on the website. ID has to be unique. Every element is supposed to have its absolutely unique ID. So what we're saying here is I want to get the value that is currently in the ID input, right? So that's coming in here so that I now have, this is a variable value that I can interact with. So I'm pulling this value here into this JavaScript so I can start working with it. Then for clean, so this is that ugly. So this is the non-sanitized text that's coming in. We want it to be clean. So we create a remove HTML tags function. So this is something we created. That's what's right here. So what we're going to say is input, so input dot value. So when this input comes in, it's called an object. There's multiple different properties to it. The property that we care about is the value. Again, whatever the word is, that's what we care about. So we're going to say the input that comes in, we want the value, and we're going to send that to the HTML remove tags function that we created. All right, so the input comes here, and then we're going to say input, so that value, dot replace, and this is what we call that regex regular expression. So take my word for it, this pattern means something. Basically what this pattern means is get rid of all the HTML tags, or basically what this is saying is find all the HTML tags, right? The ahrefs, the image, the imgs, the iframes, all that kind of stuff. Find all of those tags. And we're using the replace method here. So we're going to replace any time we find the HTML tag, we're going to replace it with absolutely nothing, just blank. And so this is what's getting returned. And so now clean is going to be whatever the input was minus all those HTML tags. And so that's where we do an alert box here, and we're going to print out what the original value was, and then we're going to print out what the clean value is. Does that make sense?
Yes, that makes sense.
Cool.
So one last question.
Yep.
I understand that there's a recording of this. I want to rewatch what you just said.
Okay.
So how would I do that?
Well, do a bit of a timestamp right now to try to figure out where I'm talking about this. And then, so I am Eli the Computer Guy. So if you go to YouTube and you go to the Eli the Computer Guy YouTube channel, that's where, again, we got the web app architecture here and the introduction to Linux. So these are all the classes. So probably tomorrow morning-ish, the class will be up here.
Great, thank you.
Yep. Okay. Da-da. And then we get to Jock. Jock, what's up?
It's kind of going off of the last caller's question.
Yep.
So in our input box, we can put in yes, whatever.
Yep.
But kind of like what ChatGPT, is there a limit to how much we can put in there? That's my first question. And that leads me to my second question, because when we put in a href tag,
Yep.
it's only so much. But what if is it possible for someone to put in a script to strip away a lot of that information that you're trying to sanitize to actually put in information to inject? So a while ago, you were showing us in another class how to strip away different parts of input.
Yep.
So that we can kind of like sanitize the information.
Yep.
Is that possible to put that into an input? A whole kind of script in one straight line to do the same effect?
That way the user is doing it or you're doing it?
The user.
Oh, I mean, if you design it poorly. So like with it, what is this, a sanitized page?
But if they put in like one whole line instead of going down to line 1, line 2, line 3, they put the whole script in one whole line and try to shove it into your input in order to put in an injection.
Yeah, I mean, with I don't know. Let's see here. Let's just go to CNN. CNN.com. So how much you can shove in, I mean, is going to be some kind of weird technical specification. Like, I mean, it's a text box, so let's see here. If I go and I try to grab a whole bunch of text here. So I do Control C. Oh, and I go to my poor little sanitize box, and I put it in, Control V, and I do sanitize. Yeah, so it's showing me the original, so all this stuff was able to get put in there. It's not showing me. Yeah, I guess there's a limit. There must be a limit on alert boxes. So, how do I put this? There's going to be weird limits on this. I'm not quite sure where those particular limits are. And so there will be a limit on how much you can put in. You have to go take a look at the specification for what that actual limit is. Again, like I said, the alert box, you could see it could only put out so much. As far as could somebody put JavaScript or whatever into here to try to hijack your site when you hit the sanitize thing, again, that goes to how you design this part of the web app. So this is Bottle. So this is the Python that we've been teaching. So God help you. I mean, like, theoretically, again, that's why I was showing you those operating system injection attacks. So if there's something in this mess, they might be able to do an injection attack there. It kind of depends on what you have going on. So they couldn't add JavaScript. So JavaScript wouldn't be the attack. So basically, they could do an injection attack. So they could try to do a SQL injection attack. So against your SQL database or your database. They could try to do an operating system injection attack, kind of what I showed you, adding on additional operating system commands. They could try to add code that would do an injection against anything the server is going to be trying to communicate with. So AWS, Azure, Twilio, theoretically, they could, and that's why you got to try to clean it up. Yep.
And you put a cap on how much input they can put in that particular space. Like age, you can only put like 3 digits. Name, you can put like maybe 25 digits. So is there a way you can put like a kind of cap on it?
Yeah.
Like age, definitely you can put a cap on that one, but like the other parts?
Yeah, and so that's where you have these constraints here. So like I showed you required, and they have like minimum length and maximum length. So you could actually put in a minimum length or a maximum length within, where am I looking at? You could put a minimum or maximum length in here to say minimum of 3, maximum of, 200 or whatever you want it to be.
Okay. I mean, that's just an extra precaution you could try to put on.
Yeah.
To prevent these attacks. Okay.
Yeah, and that's the thing too, is like when you're building this kind of stuff, is it all, and that's why I try to explain to you folks, again, the projects that I show you are garbage. I show you complete trash in order to get concepts across. what you have to be thinking about, again, if you are going to be putting this into production, it's going to be hit globally by thousands or tens of thousands of users a day. Again, that's why, that's where you go through. And again, like I say, with a whiteboard, you should be looking at every HTML form. You should be looking at every JavaScript. You should be looking at everything that Python is doing. And everything should be analyzed and basically optimized for what it is that you're trying to do. Again, if it's a name, it should max out at 30 characters just so somebody doesn't try to put a damn book in there, that type of deal. But yeah, that's going to be, again, when you're trying to do something for the enterprise for production, which again gets out of what we're doing here. Yep.
Thank you.
Yep. Yeah, and that's one of the things to be thinking about too. Again, a lot with technology. Again, everybody thinks this is like an exciting field. I have no idea why. It is boring. It is so boring. And again, that's the thing. Is again, imagine every single text field in the web application that you're creating and just going through and auditing that only the specific information that's supposed to be put in there is actually put in there, and then having somebody else verify that it actually looks right. All right, that's what, again, as I say, like 90% of our job is whiteboards. When you go into a tech company and you've got entire walls of whiteboards and then they roll in whiteboards on wheels, the reason is because that's our work. This is just how we get paid. Yeah, what's up again?
I'm sorry, I didn't take my hand down.
Oh, okay, no worries. Cool. Okay, so that is the class. Don't really see any other questions there, so if there are no other questions, it is Friday, and I'll wander off. An hour-and-a-half class. That's a good-sized class. Let's see, again, if you haven't seen it, Silicon Dojo, wherever the hell it is, silicondojo.com is now up. It is getting to be more active. It is getting to be more fleshed out. I'm going with it as we do. So on here, again, we have a link to the GitHub so you can get to all the documentation for everything that I showed you today. We have our schedule. Can we go home? Come on, Silicon Dojo. There we go. We have our schedule. So again, we have the sanitization here. Here in Asheville, North Carolina, we have the REST APIs in JSON and Python. That's going to be going on next week. And the idea here is I do want to get this fleshed out to like 10 future classes so you get a better idea of what's going on in the future. You can schedule for things. We are doing these classes here physically in Asheville now once a week. And then again, like I say, I have some interesting meetings. I actually have meetings to try to figure out what we're going to be doing in Raleigh. My idea for Raleigh, so Raleigh is about 4 hours away from here, so it's a real drive. It's not just a couple minutes for me. So what I'm thinking about is sometime in the new year, we're going to start doing boot camps. Sandal camps, how about that? We'll do sandal camps. And so basically the idea is I'll just come and then we'll just knock out like 3 days of training. So like introduction to Python or introduction to AI, introduction to web app frameworks. And so the idea is like people can come in and you can just knock out 3 days of training. So we'll have like 1 day of just JavaScript or 1 day of AI or 1 day of blah. So that's what I'm working on right now. Again, things are in the pipeline. Slowly, they're moving in the pipeline. So keep an eye on that. Again, if you cannot attend the physical classes, please don't RSVP for the physical class. That is literally the definition of a denial of service attack. Please stop doing that. And yeah, that's all I got. So final questions? Any questions? Oh, and DonorBox. I'll just, DonorBox is there. Come on, DonorBox. You ever have those days? I want to be a technology professional because I want people to think I'm smart. Aw, you're obviously not a technology professional. Oh, DonorBox. Anyways, DonorBox link. There's supposed to be a colorful thing here that allows you to tip if you want to. Anyways, that's how it goes. So with that, cool. See y'all later.